It's been controversial over there.
It's definitely been controversial, and I do want to mention that today we have found out that 2023 is indeed the hottest year on record, which means the stakes couldn't be higher. So while the first week of the summit is behind us, I want to get to those accomplishments, but first I want to set the stage for you. This year's COP28 is delivering its first ever global stock take, and what that means is it's basically a comprehensive assessment of where the world is with its climate goals since the 2015 Paris Agreement. Now, the host country, the United Arab Emirates, is also leading the process for all parties to agree upon a clear roadmap in the global energy transition that is equitable for all. So now let's turn to some of the accomplishments. On the first day, a fund was approved that would provide money to vulnerable nations hit the hardest by climate change. The Loss and Damage Fund was agreed upon last year at COP27 in Egypt, but now the fund is operational. Wealthier countries are not mandated to contribute to this fund, so it does remain to be seen whether this fund will actually be meaningful. Now, in addition to the Loss and Damage Fund, over $57 billion have so far been announced across the entire climate agenda. 8 new declarations have been announced that will help transform every major system of the global economy. That includes everything from food systems to renewable energy and efficiency to initiatives for decarbonizing heavy emitting industries. This amount also includes a $30 billion fund that the UAE set up to invest in clean energy and infrastructure in the southern hemisphere. While the funding is a positive step forward, it wasn't enough for UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. He gave a stern warning, saying the planet is minutes to midnight in its goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius.
The science is clear. The 1.5-degree limit is only possible if we ultimately stop burning all fossil fuels. Not reduce, not abate.
Now, in regard to fossil fuels, the Oil and Gas Decarbonization Charter was announced, where some of the world's largest fossil fuel companies signed up to a pledge to reduce methane emissions to near zero by 2030. This announcement also came out on the same day that U.S. officials released new rules to limit methane emissions from the oil and gas industry here in the U.S. by nearly 80% over the next 15 years. Vice President Kamala Harris also spoke at the summit and announced that the U.S. would pledge $3 billion to the Green Climate Fund, which is the United Nations flagship climate fund that helps vulnerable countries shift away from fossil fuels and adapt to increasing weather extremes.
Today, we are demonstrating through action how the world can and must meet this crisis. This is a pivotal moment. Our action collectively, or worse, our inaction, will impact billions of people for decades to come.
And a pivotal moment indeed. And reducing methane emissions could have a great impact on warming. It's a very potent greenhouse gas that is responsible for about a quarter of the world's warming. And, these are great pledges, Giselle, but we'll see if these leaders and fossil fuel industry leaders can actually step up and really walk the walk, right?
Well, especially since the controversy that came out of COP is that one of the leading oil executives, Sultan al-Jaber, came out and said there is no science showing that reducing fossil fuels will impact climate change. And that sent shockwaves through not just the summit, but throughout the world.
Of course, because as you heard from the UN General Secretary, Antonio Guterres, it is the fossil fuel industry that needs to stop emitting. That is really going to keep us under that 1.5-degree threshold. And hearing that 2023 is already the warmest on record is pretty alarming.
Yeah, it was really alarming to hear him dispute, especially an oil-rich nation holding the COP. Anyway, just quickly, any news on the agricultural front?
Yes. So on those declarations, we also have seen more than 100 countries step up to a landmark agriculture agreement. And we know that the agriculture sector emits about 1/3 of the global greenhouse gas emissions. So there's really no equitable transition here without having that sector in there. It'll protect farmers and, of course, their adaptation to these extreme weather conditions that have a big impact on our food supply.
Meaningful here in California, particularly because of our big ag industry. And you've been on that story for years. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.